So this is part A of the Kudilar TV channel being broadcast only on the internet. And this is the continuation of the Justice for the Baby Angel Geronimo editions of the Kudilar television channel. This is Thursday, the 23rd of September, 2021. And we make a comment about the role the Fleet Street papers have been playing in underreporting the correct kind of event and misdescribing the murder of a young female, Asian female primary school teacher in South London in the last few days. First of all, they're calling it killing. The Guardian has been calling it killing, but on page 5, they are using the expression suspected murder. But the murder of this child is a very young person in her 20s. And the murder has been underplayed in Fleet Street and by Fleet Street. And also, it is very significant that the suspected murderer of Sabina Nessa, who was arrested, was released too soon. Although the Metropolitan Police said that Sabina Nessa's murder was being treated as murder, they say that a man in his 40s was arrested on suspicion. Well, they then changed the concept of murder to killing. So the full sentence is a man in his 40s who was arrested on suspicion of killing her has been released under further investigation. So she was murdered in Kidbrooke, Pegler Square, Kidbrooke. Looks like the scene where she was murdered is in the Lewisham. I'm looking for any evidence of any reference to the executive mayor in Lewisham. Can't find the executive mayor mentioned anywhere in that piece. So we shall look further. and update accordingly. Just check what is being said online at this stage, which is just coming to 11:15 GMT and 12:15 in the afternoon, local time in the UK. So they're saying that the police are, this piece on the Mirror Online, which is timed yesterday, updated at 21:15 UK time, is headed Police Fear Sabina Nassa's Killer on the Loose as officers search for clues. So they're saying that the person who was arrested and released on bail is not, according to the police as reported by the Mirror, not thought to have been involved in the murder. We shall come to the main theme of this edition of the Justice for Baby Angel Geronimo later. Now it's a question of adding another campaign topic. Justice for Sabina Nessa. So we shall be. The Guardian's heading is what gives an idea about the narrative to underplay Sabina's murder. The heading says, online, The Guardian online 3 hours ago, Sabina Nessa thought to have been killed on way to meet friend, say police. What's that to do with anything? Whether she was on her way to meet a friend or on her way to do shopping or whatever. I mean, that is not something that should be highlighted at all. The heading is she has been killed, but Sarah Marsh, in her copy, timed at 8:17 hours GMT, which is the equivalent of the local time in the UK is 09:17 British Standard Time. So this one says Sabina Nessa is thought to have been murdered as she walked through a park on her way to meet a friend at a pub, police have said. Officers investigating the 28-year-old teacher's death said she left her home before walking through Cato Park in southeast London at about 8:30 p.m. last Friday. She was heading towards the Depot Bar in Pegler Square, Kidbrooke Village, when she was attacked. And the Metropolitan Police in London are quoted as saying Sabina never arrived at the pub and is thought to have been murdered as she walked through the park, they added. A post-mortem examination carried out on Monday was inconclusive. And the Detective Inspector Joe Garrity is quoted as saying, Sabina's journey should have taken just over 5 minutes, but she never made it to her destination. We know the community is rightly shocked by this murder, as are we. And we are using every resource available to us to find the individual responsible. Garrity said that the investigation was making good progress, and they believe there are still others out there who may have information that could help. If you think you saw Sabina or any suspicious behavior in or around the park on Friday evening, please speak to us. Sadiq Khan, the London mayor, is quoted as being in denial about Sabina Nessa because the first part of his statement says violence against women was a national epidemic. Now, Sadiq Khan, we have consistently on the facts, solely on the facts of his behavior, have described him he cannot do. We have spelled cannot or cannot, KHANNOT, cannot do, cannot deliver. And that's exactly what he's been doing. The Guardian says that he appeared on ITV's Good Morning Britain. And on that program, he said between last year's International Women's Day and this year's International Women's Day, 180 women were killed at the hands of men across the country. And he doesn't say anything about Sabina in this piece. How crass. So Sadiq Khan has aggravated his collusion with the narrative of denying the person, Sabina Nessa. He has just added her to a collection of statistics. So to Sadiq Khan, Sabina Nessa doesn't exist. We shall update on the contemptible, idiotic, and pro-racist role being played by this idiot, Sadiq Khan. And there is so far no reference to Sabina Nessa by Louisa Mayer. And not a single councillor from Lewisham is being mentioned in any of the items that I have so far seen. So the mayor in Lewisham was born in Cork in Ireland and grew up in Bristol. And although he was a Catholic, he has converted to Judaism. So there is no mention in the items online that I'm looking at about Sabina Nessa. There is no mention of anything said about Sabina Nessa by the current incumbent in the post of elected mayor in Lewisham. And there was no mention by Sadiq Khan, as reported by The Guardian online, based on his appearance on Good Morning Britain on ITV. And the BBC, 22 minutes ago, the heading on the BBC News, the heading is Sabina Nessa killing. The BBC is underplaying the fact that she was murdered. The Met Police investigate stranger attack theory. Again, this is a kind of denial of Sabina Nessa, her humanity, her personality, her identity. They've reduced her to a number. And the BBC piece 22 minutes ago doesn't have a byline. So the narrative is to deny Sabina full recognition as herself and to reduce her to a statistic. While it is acceptable as part of the kind of overall facts that this was a woman who was murdered, but Sabina is much more than a gender. She wasn't murdered only because she was a woman, because others haven't been murdered. And there have been, by all definitions, hundreds of thousands of passers-by, women who have passed that spot. So while this particular murderer chose or targeted Sabina Nessa, which targeting is, of course, partly connected with the fact that she was a woman, but the fact that she is an Asian woman, and whatever the picture that they're running is a picture from her degree kind of award event. So the picture of Sabina Nessa when she was murdered might add another dimension, which is the if she wore any headgear or anything similar to headgear, would have added the dimension of race, ethnicity, and faith. And there is nothing in anything that the Guardian or the BBC or the other media have published that says anything from the community, Asian community. We shall be talking about baby angel Geronimo. Anyone watching this needs to be reminded of this because we are talking about something that is absolutely important, which is the murder of Sabina Nessa in a place or in an area called Kidbrooke in the London borough of Lewisham, where she had been a dedicated primary school teacher. Now, the power crisis the gas shortage is, of course, one of the main and the promotion of Boris Johnson as the phantom Winston Churchill continues without any shame in the Daily Mail. So the Daily Mail, who is absolutely corrupt, criticizes Johnson effectively on making a stupid statement, but then it effectively mitigates and carries on praising. Even though it says that Johnson must urgently grasp this problem or risk leaving families poorer and in the cold and in dark. But it still doesn't say that he's unfit. And this idiot, Stephen Glover, sucking up to Johnson, the liar. The heading to its piece is Lesson from Boris's US trip. Biden is a liability for Britain and can't be trusted. What a stupid, idiotic thing to say. And this piece in the Daily Mail on page 23, as banks say, conmen are national security threat. Fraud victims lose £4 million a day to scams. Hackers drain £1,800 from students' account. Now, if that is actually the truth, it's not the truth, it's only an estimate. Crooks are stealing money from bank accounts, which must be many times the sum that the Mail is putting there, 4 million. And there is this narrative of actually excusing the mass murderer. The Daily Mail says on page 34, in court, dad to be. I mean, that is it. It gives the game away. He's the dad to be is the identity, not the murderer, not the massacre. As if the accusation of massacre against him is an insult to his prestigious position as dead to be. So this is diagnosing world exclusive diagnosis of Fleet Street. Absolutely for the criminals and the liars and the deniers. Which is why the role of the Fleet Street tabloids and the rest of the media as the propagandist for the criminal plotters against baby angel Geronimo. The role that they played is a threat to justice, a threat to national security, a threat to the rights of the innocent. We shall come back to that. Let's just cover this one from page 8 of today's Times. So this is the typical mental slave of the variety that the racist media are fond of. Racist media promote the likes of the mental slave Trevor Terrible Phillips, and the racists in the media promote the anti-migrant, anti-asylum seekers, pro-racist, imperialist, corrupt stance and spewing of Priti Patel. And it's not a surprise that Boris Johnson, the congenital liar and racist, has appointed this African origin person, Kemi Badenoch, who is reported in this piece by George Grills in the Times. Grills is described as a political reporter. So this Badenoch said that African societies had been unequal before the arrival of the European powers. And she argued that imperialists had just made a different bunch of winners and losers. She said that the Africans who suffered from colonialism were old elites, not everyday people. Now, quite apart from the contents of what she said, as reported by the Times, her second name should be changed if she has got any sense, any brains, or any intelligence. Her second name is spelled two parts, spelled together as one, Bad, B-A-D, as ordinary bad, and Enoch. Enoch as in the Powell. So she is a bad Enoch. And we shall be posting her name in that order, that way, in that formation. It's no wonder that she is in denial of imperialism and is actually promoting And this woman who was found on a beach in Croatia and reportedly spoke perfect English has been identified as having been a jeweler to stars. A woman found in Croatia who speaks perfect English but has no memory used to make jewelry for Diana Ross and Brigitte Bardot, friends said. She has been named by friends as Daniela Adamkova, 56, a Slovakian woman who spent part of her life in the US and Ireland. They contacted police after an appeal to identify her attracted worldwide interest. The woman known as Dana had cuts and bruises to her face when she was spotted by a fisherman on a remote, craggy outcrop on the Isle of Kirk. It's thought that she had been in the area where bears are known to prowl. For days, she was unable to say who she was or how she had got there. Friends say that she left Czechoslovakia for the US in 1984 when she was 19. None of her friends or family wanted to go with her, so she went alone. She enrolled in fashion school, where she graduated with an emphasis on jewelry and worked on her own designs while employed in a jewelry shop, etc., etc. So the mystery of the woman has been solved. And ministers preparing for long-term gas price increases. Well, they are reporting that Starmer have been scuppered. Starmer's attack on the Labour Party so-called system that used to be in place and was used by the party at the time to get Corbyn in the spot as leader. And the Peter Brooks cartoon in the Times is absolutely spot on about Johnson. And the Financial Times actually leads the lead item on page 1 of today, Thursday, the 23rd of September, 2021. It's a complete contradiction to the rest of Fleet Street. Take the line that Biden is in the wrong, and France is in the wrong as well. And there is a piece here on page 4 of the Financial Times headed US warns against gas supply manipulation. And there is another piece on financial leverage, Poland and Hungary risk European Union aid over human rights. Roald Dahl's family has sold his entire work for 500 million pounds to Netflix. Is it Netflix? Yes, Netflix have bought the entire written work of Roald Dahl for 500 million pounds. It will come to the value. And the past editorial of two in Financial Times says France and the United States need to restore mutual trust. And there is a promotion electorally for Johnson by Robert Shrimsley. And none of the pieces in the Financial Times talks about Johnson's criminality. Johnson's career is lying. So the I newspaper admits. Now, going back to the role played by Fleet Street in the propaganda against the innocent baby angel Geronimo is the role that Fleet Street is playing against all the innocents and against the truth on every single aspect. This one is in denial because it doesn't actually say that because of the cons corruption and lying, the UK is the only country in Western Europe, only country among the mentionables in terms of the size of the economies. And the fact that we have mentioned 2 days ago that the gas storage in the UK is the lowest in all the countries, the main kind of sized economies that is in Europe. The role played by the Charity Commission, the role played by the Charity Commission is a corrupt, criminal role against the virtues. And the Charity Commission is sucking up to Johnson and Ben Wallace and Grant Shapps and other criminals by launching an investigation into Penn Farthing, the ex-Marine who had to struggle to save and rescue some of his cats and dogs from Afghanistan and was prevented from getting into the UK. 67 people involved with the projects looking after the dogs and the cats in Afghanistan. And it is correctly being condemned as a politically motivated attack on Farthing. The fact that the Charity Commission exists is bad news for most of the ordinary charitable people. The Charity Commission, Child Poverty Action Group, the RSPCA, and hundreds of other smaller kind of outfits that claim to be doing charitable work for animal welfare. Then we move on to Shelter, the so-called housing charity, the Citizens Advice Bureau, Ofcom. These are all installations of the criminal dark age, dark state Britain. They are not at all doing what the propaganda says they are doing, or they are not doing what the propaganda says they exist to do. We shall come to all of those again in updating our campaigning narrative and commentary as part of the campaign for justice for baby angel Geronimo. Because none of the regulators that I've listed, none of the regulators actually affect the crimes committed by the UK state. Or to be more precise, the crimes being committed under the cover of the UK state by criminals put in posts in various departments, various offices of the UK state. So, for example, this is, now how is this smiling picture of this embarrassment? How is the smiling picture of this lying conman? How is it a fitting picture when the heading above his face admits 1 million more see their energy farm fail? So 1 million more means that there have been millions before, millions in the past few days. And there is nothing, there is no organization that exists in this country that is actually holding the criminals doing crimes under covers of being employees in government departments to account. Had there been such an audit regulating organization or outfit or service in existence in the last 4 years, then Baby Angel Geronimo would not have been targeted for more than a few months, I suppose, at most. But there has been no auditing organization that holds government departments to account. So the next best thing, if you like, next available thing that you could imagine taking the place of the absent regulator would be the courts of law or the so-called democratically elected House of Parliament, House of Commons. And as we have been saying, on the evidence, on the facts, the House of Commons is politically dead, ethically dead, morally dead. I mean, being whipped, that is politically orchestrated and controlled by the so-called leadership to vote either one way or the other, is not really truthful and honest or independent or free or democratic. And the House of Commons has not, I mean, of the 600 odd sort of MPs currently in the House of Commons, not a single one, not one single MP. Let's look at this. So the Commons is an elected body consisting of 650 members, known as MPs. So there are 650 members currently in place. And what have they done? 650 members, the overwhelming majority of them belong to the two parties, the Conservatives and the Labour Party, so called. Remember, on the facts, the Labour Party is politically murdered. So it's just there as a fig. So out of 650, there are, and the details on the Wikipedia entry are too long and too lengthy. They don't actually constitute much substance. In any case, 650 members, regardless of what party they actually claim to belong to or what party they don't claim to belong to, there should have been at least one. In the last 4 years of the orchestrated campaign by DEFRA, via DEFRA, through DEFRA, against the baby angel Geronimo, all the key attacks targeted at baby angel Geronimo have been made public, made known. All the key attacks on the most innocent baby angel Geronimo have been made known. So what are these MPs? Judging by the persistent and criminal silence, they are criminals, complicit with the criminals at DEFRA, and aiding and abetting the criminal denial agenda fronted by the liar, congenital liar, Boris Johnson. And the Fleet Street liars have got this creepy, stupid, phantom kind of idea. They put Johnson looking at a picture or an image of Churchill at the American Capitol, the American parliamentary seat. I mean, what's the point? Despite the denials, Churchill actually was not very good at persuading the Americans of anything. Churchill actually made numerous attempts at convincing the American president to join the so-called war against Germany. And as typically done by Fleet Street, Churchill was overhyped. Churchill was overstated and overpraised. Now, despite various facts that could be advanced, in making comparisons, there is no way that Boris Johnson should be, even as a joke, be pitted against or shown as a statesman of any order that Churchill is rated to be. I mean, Churchill was not noted he did tell lies, and he did ask his son's wife to sleep with Americans in order to get information from them. But that was not something that was made known while it was being done. Whereas Johnson as a liar is a daily reference, as a daily point of reference, if you like, even by Fleet Street and in Fleet Street. So we said that the targeting of the innocent baby angel Geronimo by the criminals and evil doers based at or using the cover of DEFRA. Not a single member of parliament out of 650 even bothered to put what is normally known as being a token thing, gesture, hardly the motion. Not a single member of any non-conservative, non-Labour Party bothered to make a request to the Speaker to speak about a campaign of criminality against an innocent baby angel Geronimo. So anyone who may have wondered why we've been calling this dark land, evil land, these are the actual real facts. As we said before, when Alexander Dubček was being targeted by the USSR, and the USSR kind of serving local stooges in Czechoslovakia, the entirety of the Western media devoted columns and columns and hours in support of Alexander Dubček and his right to free speech or freedom of speech, and against his being victimized by the dictatorship of the USSR. And everything that was said in defense of Alexander Dubček and his rights, everything can be said in defense of baby angel Geronimo. And in upholding his rights and his innocence. In fact, as compared to any of the figureheads, any of the kind of widely known targets of Russian, if you like, violations of basic rights, of basic universal justice, all of them, all the ones that can be listed as being on the list of targets of the USSR during 30, 40, 50, 60 years of Stalinism or comparable persecution and repression. The behavior of Boris Johnson fronted cabal and the behavior of DEFRA with Boris Johnson's active collusion and participation. The behavior is worse than any targeted target of the Soviet propaganda vilification, conspiracy, criminality. And the fact that Baby Angel Geronimo has been targeted because of his being at the highest level of innocence shows that this has been dark land, evil land. Let's look at Dubček. Remember, Alexander Dubček is spelled D-U-B for Bertie, C-E-K, Dubček. Alexander Dubček was a Slovak politician who served as the first secretary of the Presidium of the Central Committee of the Communist Party of, let's see where, Czechoslovakia. So he was the de facto leader of Czechoslovakia for a year, for just under a year, from 1968 to 1969. And Dubček attempted to reform the communist government during the Prague Spring, but was forced to resign following the Warsaw Pact invasion in August 1968. And during his leadership, under the slogan "Socialism with a Human Face," Czechoslovakia lifted censorship on the media and liberalized Czechoslovak society, fueling the so-called new wave in Czechoslovak filmography. However, he was put under pressure by Stalinist voices inside the party, as well as the Soviet leadership, who disliked the direction the country was taking and feared that Czechoslovakia could loosen ties with the Soviet Union and become more westernized. As a result, the country was invaded by the other Warsaw Pact countries in August 68, ending the Prague Spring. And Dubček resigned in April 69 and was succeeded by Gustav Husak, who initiated normalization. Dubček was then expelled from the Communist Party in 1970. Now, obviously, this Wikipedia is an idiotic entry. It doesn't actually focus on the persecution of Dubček. So this entry in the Wikipedia is completely stupid. What I'm talking about, Alexander Dubček, and what I'm basing on is what I remember from the contemporary coverage at the time that these things were happening in the late 1960s, especially and including highlights of Dubček's exemplary personality as painted by the BBC World Service. None of that is there in the Wikipedia. Essentially, the targeting of Dubček is the nearest that I can find of many incidents that illustrate the mentality of criminals hiding in the government bureaucracy and state bureaucracy, like the DEFRA, criminals and crooks. And they could not find a more innocent being than baby angel Geronimo. It's like baby angel Geronimo personifies innocence, embodies innocence at the highest level, universal innocence at the highest level. And compared to his highest level of innocence, his defamers, the criminals bent on doing him harm, for he is being so good, so moral. So that's the contrast between light and darkness. The people who persecuted Alexander Dubček were spiteful in the extreme sense of the term. But the spite and the hatred and the criminality of personality and their jealousy were unable to control the minds of the vast majority of the people, both in Czechoslovakia and elsewhere in the world, about the vilification prompted by and ordered by the USSR dictatorship with the Stalinist kind of framework. So to most people in the world and in Czechoslovakia itself, Dubček was treated with reverence and respect because of his morality and because of his concern for compassion. So what has been happening with baby angel Geronimo is that Fleet Street has been conspiring, or the Fleet Street editors, policymakers have been actively conspiring against baby angel Geronimo along with DEFRA and in league with DEFRA, in league with the Boris Johnson fronted criminal gang. The gangsters are as scared of the truth about their past and their crimes against baby angel Geronimo's innocence as were the hoodlums in the Stalinist bureaucracy and the local affiliates in Czechoslovakia against the impact of the moral stance the humanitarian stance, the universally defined and definable democratic stance taken by and personified by Alexander Dubček. So the same thing applies to Alexander Solzhenitsyn. Of course, Solzhenitsyn, being the Russian kind of version, was a writer. He was not the head of the Communist Party, or he was not the head of the kind of presidium or the Supreme Soviet or whatever. He was a writer, and he was a thinker, he was a philosopher. But the values that Alexander Dubček had been advocating for or advocating in Czechoslovakia were very much similar to the values that Alexander Solzhenitsyn had been advocating, promoting, articulating mainly in his writings. These are universal, they're matched universally. And that is the universality of the appeal of the values that both men, campaigning against repression, persecution, dictatorship and denial, and lying by the state. These resonated with the unnamed, uncountable numbers of people who lived in other countries in the world outside Czechoslovakia and the Soviet Union. Which is what has been happening with the news that baby angel Geronimo has been targeted by the UK state in the same venomous way that these Stalinists in Moscow and their agents and stooges in Czechoslovakia targeted the two men. The Russian one, Solzhenitsyn, and the Czechoslovakian one, the Slovak politician in the combined state Czechoslovakia, Czechs and Slovaks, Alexander Dubček. While Dubček and Solzhenitsyn were able to communicate in human languages, baby angel Geronimo has not been communicating in human languages as known ordinarily. But the impact of the truth of the targeting of the baby angel Geronimo by the criminals has not been held back, has not been capable of being suppressed from reaching those people outside of the dark land who have been able to express voluntary, spontaneous compassion, solidarity, total solidarity with baby angel Geronimo, and absolute revulsion against the evildoers at DEFRA. And the evildoers, colluders in Downing Street. And the evildoers, propaganda agents in Fleet Street and elsewhere in the so-called British media, peddling, spewing untruths and lies and criminalities against the baby angel Geronimo. as compared with the kind of trade unions that are reportedly the main source of income for the bureaucracy operated in the name of the Labour Party, which has been politically murdered by Keir Starmer. The magnitude of the crimes, the magnitude of the wrongs, the magnitude of the immorality, the magnitude of the violations of ethics, morality, and the highest principles of justice, as evident in the years of propaganda and attacks against the innocent baby angel Geronimo. These are absolutely unprecedented. As I said, nothing in all the Stalinist crimes against Dubček, nothing remotely compares with the magnitude, the depth of depravity by DEFRA, depraved DEFRA. And who are the depraved DEFRA? Those depraved criminals, evil ones, evildoers, are personified, embodied in Christine Middlemiss, but she is not the only one. There are others colluding, complicit with her crimes and evil doing and evil plots and evil denials against the baby angel Geronimo. These are the individuals, including the George injustice, the evilness itself. No individual in the whole details of the evidence of the crimes against Dubček and the crimes against Solzhenitsyn, no individual wrongdoer, evildoer has been identified, at least as accessible from where I am and where I have been, as doing as much evil, as much wrong, uttering and confecting and conspiring to utter and confect as many lies and untruths against the most innocent baby angel Geronimo. So anyone watching this program and thinking why I am comparing baby angel Geronimo with Solzhenitsyn and Dubček can get the answer straight away. And the answer is that there is no other comparison. You have to go that far and into the depth of the depravity of DEFRA by citing examples like that, because in the ordinary, normal kind of operations and behavior of states and state agents and state employees, you cannot find anything like the depraved behavior by DEFRA against baby angel Geronimo, who is the absolute opposite of the depravity and the badness and the wrongness. Now, just look at this one. Just as an example, it's like it doesn't matter. 1 million more see their energy farm fall. And above that heading, it's like people going without, being hungry, suffering shortages, food shortage, etc. 5 million homes facing bill hikes, that is, rising energy prices, as if those things don't matter. How do you describe that kind of blasé stupidity by the dirty diggers scum? Millions of people are going to go without energy. I mean, it doesn't matter. That's what is happening with the darkness that is personified by Boris Johnson. Denial personified by Boris Johnson. Evil personified by Boris Johnson, in cahoots, collusion, complicit with the criminals at DEFRA, depravity. They are openly breaking the law, openly plotting to break the law. And against who? They're openly breaking the law against somebody who is good, who is best, who is of the highest character, let's say, the highest morality, let's say. When Chris Cook wrote his notebook piece in the Financial Times, his heading, the heading to his piece read, UK officials are going to great lengths to keep their secrets secret. And they're saying, and he said, Chris Cook said, so he said, the UK officials are going to great lengths to keep their secret secret. And the subheading underneath that said the Freedom of Information Act is being quietly gutted by civil servants. That is, the UK government employees are breaking the law. So he said, back in 2015, a pair of senior British government officials were castigated, that is, strongly condemned, by a judge. Evidence they had presented to court had fallen way below the standards that the public and the court are entitled to expect of government departments and senior civil servants. That's what the judge, Mr. Justice Charles, sitting as a tribunal judge, said. And this was an upper tribunal, administrative appeals chamber. Now, I'm not a fan of tribunals, and the reasons are very clear. Because the tribunals are racist and corrupt and absolutely dysfunctional. But this is not about a white tribunal judge making a comment about an Asian or an African kind of litigant. These people are all white people. And the judge is white, and the department, which was the department in the name of health, that is the Department of Health, that was the subject of the tribunal's ruling. So the race factor didn't enter. When it does enter, which it does in most legal policy, government policy issues related litigation, the role of the court becomes indescribably worse than it already is. Now, this Mr. Justice Charles condemned the two Department of Health officials or employees. And the principle that he upheld there, when he said that the public and the courts are entitled to expect the standard, that principle is what can be cited in support of the entitlement by Baby Angel Geronimo to be given the full facts and the truth of the depraved, corrupt, criminal conspiracy and violations of the law and the wrongdoing by DEFRA and the complicity with DEFRA's wrongdoing by Boris Johnson and his cabal at number 10 Downing Street, and the collusion by the crook Keir Starmer, who endorsed DEFRA's depravity and attacks against Baby Angel Geronimo. And everyone else that has done that, like West Streeting, like Dominique Lyson, like Bristol Lies, and other assorted criminals who have taken the word of the depraved DEFRA and repeated the lies, as Private Lie has repeated, Ian Pissoff has repeated. So what we are saying here is that the ethics, the evidence of Baby Angel Geronimo being absolutely innocent